How would you like to be happy and manage the brain chemicals that make us feel good? Dr. Loretta Breuning will tell us how. She is the author of Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and endorphin levels. And she's the founder of the Inner Mammal Institute and Professor Emerita at California State University. So, Dr. Loretta, it's so amazing to have you here to talk about this very important topic that is impacting millions of people worldwide. So tell us, what are the causes of people around the world not being as happy as they would like? And what can we do about that?
Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
So the cause is basic biology, which is that our brain is not designed to release happy chemicals all the time. They're designed to have a particular job and only turn on in short spurts when that job is appropriate. And we have been really misinformed when we think that you should be happy all the time and you have a disorder and you need medication if you're not happy all the time. So I have actually a second book about that part of it, which is called Why You're Unhappy, Biology versus Politics. But the introductory book is about how you can get a little more happiness by understanding the natural job of these chemicals so that you can turn them on in healthy ways rather than chasing the unhealthy ways that we're all so familiar with.
Wow. So tell us, what do we need to do in order to manage and to boost our serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin levels?
So that's, of course, a 200-page question, but I'll break it down very simply. So these chemicals are inherited from animals. So monkey studies have been done to show what behavior that chemical triggers in a monkey so that we can understand what's the real job of that chemical. Now, these studies are never talked about and they've disappeared because animal rights activists made it taboo to talk about monkey studies. And so it's unfortunate because animals just act on their happy chemicals, whereas humans, we restrain ourselves, we cover it up, and we say, oh, no, that's not what I was thinking. Because these happy brain chemicals evolved in a world where you had to look for food all the time to survive. And mammals would just be very pushing for food and fighting over food and getting excited when they found food. And in today's world, food is more abundant, so we look for other things to get excited about. And whatever got you excited in your past, neurons connected and wired you to get excited about that. And that's why you may get excited about one thing and I get excited about something else. And maybe I do too much of my thing and you do too much of your thing. So the bottom line is to learn first, that this feeling of excitement is not meant to be on all the time. And my way of getting it is very limited, and I can build new neural pathways to get it in new ways. And you can build new neural pathways to broaden your ways of turning on your dopamine.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Tell us more about how can we build new neural pathways for these for serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin to be boosted naturally, and how does that work?
Sure. So my information is all based on animal research. And I studied psychology for decades. And like most people who look for wellness information on the internet, they're getting academic psychology, which has sort of made the animal perspective rather taboo. But the idea is if you look at an animal trainer, like if you get a dog trainer, or if you go to a dolphin place that trains dolphins to do tricks, you see that they get a little reward for a little action. And that's how we retrain ourselves. We give ourselves a little reward for a little action. And you do it over and over. And soon you've wired yourself to do the new action without a lot of rewards. And the reason people don't often do this is partly because the new trick that we're trying to learn, we make it so complicated that we never get there. Or some people, they make the bar so low that they just reward themselves all the time. They open another bottle of wine and they're maybe rewarding themselves for bad behavior. But if you really go to a dog training class, then you could get very specific. Okay, I'm only going to reward myself for good steps, but I'm going to give myself small rewards for small good steps so I can always get the reward and then I'll always feel good.
Thank you. Tell us more about that. Like, give us an example of how this would work out in terms of a small reward and what kind of activities would we reward?
Sure. So I'll give you a common example. Let's say a person is frustrated at work and they feel like they want to fill out more job applications. But then when they go to do that, they get frustrated and disappointment. And we could talk about disappointment creates a big neural pathway that makes you more disappointment and you just don't want to fill out those job applications. So you come home from work and you're frustrated and you open a bottle of wine. And so you're really rewarding yourself for bad behavior rather than good behavior. So another way to do it would be to say, I am not going to give myself a morning coffee until I fill out one job application. And then I have my morning coffee. And then in the middle of the morning, I'm going to have my delicious treat after I fill out another job application. And then at night, I'm not going to give myself my dessert until I fill out another job application. And then I'm going to not watch a movie until I fill out another. And so I'm having a great day because I'm getting rewards all day. See, but I'm still having that feeling of accomplishment. And then if I do that every day for 6 weeks, I'll build new neural pathways that will expect a good feeling. And I'll know that the way to get a good feeling is to take action to get closer to my goals.
Wow, that's fascinating. Tell us more about how do we annihilate a negative neural pathway? So let's say when we are rewarding ourselves with really nice stuff, when we are doing something negative, and therefore we create this negative cycle of, experiencing pleasure when we really shouldn't. And because of that, perhaps we turn it out of proportion, we make it bigger, and therefore we are incentivized to behave badly. How do we discontinue that kind of poor behavior that maybe leads to poor health or poor decisions? And how do we replace them with good behavior and happiness from good stuff?
Sure. So again, it all comes from animal training, but it's very complicated. So I'll give you a simple animal example. You may have heard that there are animals, like sometimes in the zoo, and they have a bad habit, like they scratch themselves so badly until there's no more hair and they hurt their skin, but they can't stop scratching because it's just a habit. So you could think that's like equivalent to if you have a habit of drinking or smoking or gambling. It's a real physical pathway in your brain. And even when it hurts you, you just keep doing it because your brain goes where the real physical pathways are. So how does an animal trainer fix that? They literally train this animal when it goes to scratch. They give it a ball or a toy, and they keep that hand busy so it can't scratch. And they do that at that moment, just at that moment when you're going to start scratching, because that's the neural pathway. And if you give it a reward in that moment, then it trains your brain to turn on a good feeling. What caused your scratching is you were already upset about something. And that moment when you go to open the bottle of wine or have the cigarette or eat the pint of ice cream that you were feeling bad. And how can you give yourself something good instead and build a new neural pathway? So what is the something good instead? I personally like to use comedy. So I could say that I'm going to listen to 10 minutes of comedy whenever I'm having a frustration. And many people think, oh, I don't have time to listen to 10 minutes of comedy, but that they have all this time to waste on all their bad habits. So it's really very effective. And you don't have to use comedy if you enjoy playing the guitar or gardening, whatever you enjoy, but find something that's accessible in the moment when you feel bad and make it something that you actually like rather than something someone else on the internet recommends. Because the internet, they recommend, lifting weights, and that doesn't feel good. And then your brain is going to say, oh, I'd rather smoke a cigarette than lift weights or something, So you have to actually find treats that are personally pleasing to you, but are healthier than the treat you're already using.
Thank you. For people that are, let's say, addicted to sex, and imagine that they tend to get these serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphin levels going up as they are experiencing, let's say, the opportunity to be with multiple women. And let's say that is, it's a negative thing, right? But they are addicted to that kind of variety and, excitement. How can they start replacing that with something good that will benefit them? Would it be that they would take up swimming or running or what?
Sure. Again, that's what the internet would suggest. But if they're still having the bad habit, then that hasn't worked for them, right? And they've already heard that you should, get exercise and like that cures everything, but it doesn't. You've raised so many good points. So one of the good points is there's such a wide range of harmful behaviors. So for one person, it's sex addiction. For another person, it's a gambling addiction. For another person, it's an anger addiction. And for another person, it's a victim feeling addiction. So it can be all of these things, any of those things. So the first thing is to notice that moment when you start that thought. So the person starts thinking, how can I get an opportunity to do this thing that I like to do? The minute you have that thought, it's because something else was going on in your mind that you felt bad about. And this is your brain's way of shifting you from the bad thought to a good thought. And that bad thought you have is a bad thought you had in your childhood, because that's when these big negative pathways are built in our brain. And childhood and adolescence is when we built the big pathway that says, instead of feeling bad about this, I'm going to do this other thing. And each brain learns what that other thing is for them. So even for some person, it's like a work addiction. So it can be anything, because once the brain builds the pathway, it's always there. So I say it's like building an exit ramp. It's a highway in your brain, and every brain builds the highways when they're young, but you want to build an exit ramp from that highway. To do that, you have to repeat the new choice a lot. And how do you get yourself to repeat the new choice a lot? First, the new choice has to be rewarding. So what that person with the sex addiction, they could say, well, nothing's more rewarding than what I'm already doing, because they're going for this peak moment. And our brain was not designed to have peak moments all the time, but only when we take action to meet a survival need. So first we tell ourselves, well, what are my real survival needs? So having sex with a lot of people is not a real survival need. But if you study chimpanzees, you could see well, that's sort of a chimpanzee impulse to do that. A lot of these responses come from our monkey brain. But what is the monkey brain really trying to do is promote its survival. So in the animal world, that happens from, frankly, reproduction. They want to have as many children as possible. And then they want their children to be as successful as possible. But once you have children, you realize that you can't control them. So our adolescent brain says, I want to control everything in order to feel good, but then you can't really control the world. So a lot of it is to understand that the highways in your brain were built when you were young from the stress chemical called cortisol. So when you were young, your cortisol turned on all the time because we're all born crying and little kids have tantrums. So that's our natural state. So this whole thing that our natural state is happy is total BS. It's not true. Our natural state is crying. And it's a very difficult skill to train ourselves to stop having this explosion of cortisol. And so let's say there are 100 ways to train yourself to not explode to cortisol. And a sex addiction is one way to stop it. But if you only know that one way, you're depriving yourself of 99 other ways to feel good. So instead of thinking it as a negative, I have to give up this thing I like, let's just say, I'm going to experiment with 99 other things that I might like. So, and again, for one person, they might turn on cooking shows and discover, 10 ways to bake a cake. And they can bake the most beautiful cake and impress their friends and relatives. So it could be anything, and you have to choose it yourself. And don't just make it one thing, but experiment with a lot of things.
Thank you. What should entrepreneurs do who want to be always happy? Is it a good idea to be always happy? And if not, why not?
Great question. So our brain is not designed to be happy all the time. In the animal world, we see that these chemicals only turn on in short spurts in the right moment. So I've explained dopamine a little bit. Dopamine turns on when a monkey wakes up in the morning and it's hungry and it looks for food. And when it sees some food in the distance, its dopamine turns on and it moves toward the food. And it gets a little more dopamine until it reaches the food. And then it gets a big spurt. And then the dopamine stops because it's already done its job. So if dopamine were on all the time, you would just run around in circles and waste your energy because you only want it when there's some goal that you can actually reach that actually meets a need. Now let's talk about serotonin. This is the complicated one because in the modern world, it's been taken over by the medical and pharmaceutical profession, and there's a lot of misinformation. But 50 years ago, it was discovered that the animal brain releases serotonin when it has a one-up moment. I call it a one-up moment, which is, I am stronger than you. So if there's a banana between you and me, I'm going to get the banana. And in the monkey world, if you're stronger and you get the banana, you build more muscles and then you get more bananas. But if you're weaker, you don't want to take that banana because the other monkey will attack you and you might get permanently injured and die. So the highest priority is for the weaker monkey to pull back and avoid conflict with the stronger mammal. So their serotonin is not meant to be on all the time, because if it was, they would be in a delusion of thinking that they're the stronger animal, and then they would get injured. So it is only meant to turn on when you literally find an advantage where you're in the position of strength. Nobody has it all the time. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, if you think that you're always in a position of advantage and you're not, you're going to waste money on an investment that is not sound. So you're better off not trying to feel good all the time. And the way I explain that is to imagine like a car that you have a neutral gear and you're actually smarter when you're in neutral, and you only turn on the happy chemicals to go forward when you see a good opportunity, and then it stops and then you go back into neutral. Now, what do you do when you're in neutral? Do you go open a bottle of wine and turn on your other bad behaviors? Or do you say to yourself, it's good to be in neutral because that's when I'm making healthy decisions. Now, some people, when they're in neutral, they immediately go into cortisol, the threat, and they start saying, everybody's attacking me, the world is terrible, everything's unfair. And that's a negative, like a car is going in reverse. And you don't want that either. You want to be in neutral.
Thank you. I've been depressed before, and I've been depressed for a few years. And I found that although I'm a really great manifester, and you can say for the outside world, I could come across relatively happy. And I was, you can say, I had moments, let's say at home, where I was, ultra happy. I would like dance in the kitchen and I would go for nice walks. And I had moments, but at the end of the day, I was still depressed. What would you suggest people do who are depressed to kind of come out of that so they can activate these hormone levels so that they can become happy again and feel, you can say, relatively normal again?
Yeah, that's a real good question. First, again, let's not say happy again, because that assumes that they used to be happy, and like normal assumes that everybody else is happy. But really, we're all born crying and we all have tantrums when we're young. We're all born with this tendency to have these painful cortisol explosions. And guess what? A child cannot meet their own survival needs. Children are weak and vulnerable. And so they all build these neural pathways to feel bad. So we all come to adult life with this sense of vulnerability, and the world is not nice to us. And so how can we relax and stop torturing ourselves with more of these threat chemicals than are absolutely necessary? I'll give you an example. We all have a body that can catch disease and die at any moment. And that's hard. And we have to train ourselves to not think about that all the time. So if you spend your free time watching movies about people who are getting cancer and dying of cancer, you're going to torture yourself with more threat chemicals than necessary. If you grew up in a dangerous world where people actually attacked you, and then you spend your free time watching movies about people getting shot and attacked and cut up with knives, you're going to torture yourself with threat chemicals more than necessary. So the first step is to understand your own wiring, to accept yourself, to say, I'm normal, like everyone. I have this wiring to turn on my threat chemicals, and the electricity in the brain, it flows into those threat chemicals. Your brain's electricity just goes wherever the pathway is the biggest. So we all turn on the trauma of our past years, but this electricity, we can put on the brakes, and we can build an exit from that highway and say, I'm not going to just reactivate my childhood. I'm going to give myself rewards. Now, you mentioned that you were able to put on a nice face in public, and that's a good thing, but it's only step one, because if you're doing it to please another person, then you may have connected it to your past pain pathways. So if you put on a nice face by pleasing yourself and doing things you like, then you'll build patterns to enjoy things for its own sake. And you don't have to completely change your life to do that. But let's say if you do it for 5 minutes, 3 times a day. Okay, 5 minutes, 3 times a day, I'm going to stop and do something I like just because I like it. Then you will build that exit ramp from your negative pathways into a positive thought loop that I can please myself.
Thank you. I've noticed that I have times in my life when everything is flowing and I'm happy for no reason. And then I feel almost like I'm in this channel, like where everything is flowing and so many opportunities are coming to me and everything is working out. And then sometimes I feel like almost like I've hit a wall where, things are not working so much and I'm stuck. And then, I'm getting upset over small things and, people are not so nice to me or people don't appreciate me. And I've often found that that tends to be almost like the universe's way of kind of guiding me to a different direction. Because I think if we were always happy, regardless of what happened to us, I think we would never grow because we would never look for something better. And it's almost like I don't know, maybe the body's way of saying, stop hitting the wall, just go to a different direction because this isn't working, right? So what would you say should someone do when they are experiencing like this sadness for a long time? What should they do differently or better so that they actually do move in the direction that could be better for their progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it helps to know how cortisol is what's called the stress chemical, and I call it the threat chemical because threat implies that I'm feeling threatened, whereas stress, we've learned to blame stress on society, like it's the world's fault for stressing me. So the way cortisol works is very interesting. Let's look at it from an animal's perspective. If you're a gazelle and you're eating grass on the savannah and you smell a lion, but gazelles are hungry. They need to eat all the time to stay alive. So when they smell a lion, they would rather keep eating rather than run. But the reason they run is because cortisol feels so bad that you want to do anything to make it stop. So this is the core impulse we have is I just want to do something fast to make it stop. So what does a gazelle do when it first has that cortisol? It doesn't run first. First, it stops to gather information because it doesn't want to run toward the lion. It wants to run away from the lion. So in our daily lives, some little thing triggers your cortisol because it reminds you of your past life. And that tells you to stop what you're doing and look for evidence that there's a lion. Look for evidence about the lion. So now you're only looking for bad stuff. And now you're going to find more bad stuff because that's how our intelligent human part of our brain tries to help out the animal part of our brain to say, oh, I'm going to find all this evidence of threat going on. And that triggers more cortisol. Now, we need to know that cortisol lasts in your body for a lot longer than happy chemicals. It lasts about an hour. So for about an hour, you're doing nothing but looking for bad stuff. So if something else bad happens in that hour, even though it's very small, then I'm going to get more cortisol. Then something else bad. So it could be just a coincidence that 3 little things went wrong for me. This happens to me so much. And then it's like, gosh, I feel so bad, but there's really nothing terrible happened, but it was 3 little things. So what can you do about it? So I'll give you a simple example. A friend sent me a link and said, this is so funny, you'll love it. So I opened it up, but instead of watching it, I saved it. And then on the day when something bad happens, then I watch that thing that the friend said, this is so funny, you'll love it. So I sort of collect fun things. And then while my cortisol is surging, it's like, I'm not going to try to do problem solving while my cortisol is surging. It's sort of like if you're a gazelle and you say, I want to make the world safe. I'm not going to go out and eat grass until we completely get rid of all the lions in the world. That gazelle is going to starve to death. So that's sort of like a person that says, I can't be happy until the world is perfect. But the world will never be perfect because your animal brain knows that you're going to die someday and is always panicking about that. And it knows that all your loved ones are going to die someday. So we need to manage our brain rather than make the world perfect.
Thank you. That's so interesting. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Sure. So my website is innermammalinstitute.org, innermammalinstitute.org. I have a lot of free information in all different forms. So whether you like to read or watch or listen, and I have a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart. If you put in your email at the bottom of the page, you'll get 1 email a day on 5 chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphin, and cortisol.
Thank you.
Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health changemakers to live your healthiest life ever.